What is up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast, the official podcast of thefantasyfootballfanatics.com. This is the show for Friday, February 9th, and I am your host, Griffin Palmer, joined by the one and only Jason Cabrera. What's up, Jason?
It is the off season.
Officially.
Time for stuff to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, officially. It's time.
I mean, we all love football, obviously. We wouldn't do this if we didn't have a love for football. But, Jason, I share this with you, but you take it to the next level. You have a true passion for the offseason. You love the inner workings of the league, the business side of things. I mean, well, if I had to ask you, and this is not scripted or prepared at all, what is the thing you look forward to the most during the offseason? Is it the rookies? Is it the draft? Is it training camp? Is it the signings? OTAs? What intrigues you the most?
I love the draft. I mean, anyone who listens to the show, they know that. I love to sit there and I watch the whole draft. I'm one of the weirdos. I'm home from work. I schedule myself off for those days, and I will sit and I will watch the entire draft. And leading up to the draft, I do unlimited amounts of mock drafting and trying to figure out what I think is going to happen and trying to get myself to get more and more accurate. And I was relatively accurate last year with a lot of my predictions. So I really love the draft. It's awesome to see new blood coming into the NFL. Other than that, definitely like the coaching moves is always intriguing because it can completely change. I mean, look at McVay. He goes out to the Rams and suddenly they're a high-powered offense.
Worst to first, that division.
Exactly, right? And then it completely changed the whole face of not just a team, but a division and the NFL itself. So
right.
I love the offseason. The possibilities are endless.
Yes. I more or less kind of expected that to be your answer because, CJ and I do a lot of research, obviously, as we start switching gears into the offseason and as we do these shows, which, like we're here today to recap what happened, but start switching gears into the upcoming draft class, the scouting, everything's coming up, the scouting combine. But, we do a lot. But, Jason, you trump us in spades. So, yeah, this is definitely your we all have things that we think we specialize in, that we think we bring to the table more than others. Rookies are definitely your bag. So, yeah, I would agree with that. Anywho, let's move on. And because we have an amazing show for you guys today. Today we are going to be talking, finally, the definitive 2017 quarterback review. We're going to try our best to get through quarterbacks 1 through 12 today. And, this might be a long one, but buckle up. We're going to do our best. We're, of course, going to also bring you all the top headlines from around the league. Not too much happening, but some big things to talk about. As always, make sure you guys subscribe if you're listening, iTunes or the Apple Store app. They've apparently changed the name of it. There's Stitcher. There's Podcast Addict. New news. We are officially on Google Play as well. So, hey, you can find us there now as well. And, yeah, just subscribe wherever you are listening. It was awesome. I'd say on my phone, okay, Google, bring up the latest show for, the latest Fantasy Football Fanatics show. And, boop. Started auto-playing while I was driving. It was awesome. So, yeah, you can find that. Subscribe year-round. And, like we've been kind of talking about, we are here to cover everything that happens through the offseason to prep you guys for next year's drafts, next year's fantasy football season, hopefully bringing home some of those titles. That's why we do what we do. If you guys have questions, please make sure you submit them however you feel is best. We're on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Fantasy Football Fanatics. Just some of many, many resources that we've made available for you. If you want to support the show and go a step further, help us keep doing what we're doing, which we greatly appreciate, and we do our best to return that favor to you many, many times over. Head over to patreon.com/the Fantasy Football Fanatics, where you guys can get yourself a bonus episode every single week. And again, where we cover the more in-depth, the more advanced things. And that's where we get into a lot of stuff that we really enjoy, the IDP and the auction and all that other daily dynasty, all that other stuff. We just, unfortunately, 2 shows a week is not enough time to really get to that stuff here. So head over to patreon.com/the Fantasy Football Fanatics if that's more your speed. And I guess it would be appropriate, since you weren't here on Tuesday's show, Jason, we'll start with a warm-up, and I just want to know, because we haven't really talked about this besides a little bit of messaging here and there, what were your thoughts on the Super Bowl? What were your big takeaways?
Well, my big takeaways is you had 2 high-powered defenses for this Super Bowl, but it didn't seem to matter. I don't think I have seen such a one-sided game as far as, and what I mean by one-sided is all offense, just all offense all the time. There was one punt. As you guys covered last show, I did listen back to the show, and you covered it quite extensively. There was one punt in the entire game. That is ridiculous. You think about these defenses, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Patriots. Bend and don't break for the Patriots, and the Eagles are stingy. And there was one punt. I mean, that is absolutely nuts, and it was just back and forth down the field. You gotta know that the Eagles' game plan is what did this for them, because they're the only team that really figured out this year how to beat the Patriots in the postseason, and it was because they were aggressive. I mean, Peterson was just amazingly aggressive. Some of those play calls, you're just like, whoa!
Yeah, those fourth down
leave
plays,
your balls out on the field,
going for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the pass to Foles was ridiculous, and I loved it. I loved the timing of the pass to Foles, because it was a little bit after they tried the same thing with Brady. Of course, didn't work out, and then they're kind of like, hey, this is how you do that. Let me show you how you do that into the end zone.
Did
touchdown.
You see the GIF where they did that, but instead of the football, they had the Lombardi Trophy, so it bounced off his hands?
I saw that.
That made me laugh pretty hard.
Savage.
Sorry, New England fans, but
that's
funny. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, then the other thing is a couple small things, like Malcolm Butler's benching.
Right.
I've looked at it from a lot of different angles, and if you look at it from the angle of, you're talking about probably the best coach in the NFL history, in Bill Belichick. He's going to know what's best for his team, okay? And I mean, 500 yards, and they played a great game. The Patriots played a great game. I mean, you cannot take anything away from the way they played during the Super Bowl, but they just couldn't make it happen. But I don't think Malcolm Butler was a situation that we can really know that much, because we weren't in the room.
No.
And yeah, he played on special teams, but that's different. That's different from putting him out there every single down.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So as much as I'm kind of with you guys going, why in the world did you do that? Obviously Belichick knew something we didn't know. So I understand, and it's hard for anyone to look at Belichick and go, well, that was stupid, because, I mean, it's Belichick.
I'm
He's
intrigued, because I think that we'll get more light on this situation in the coming weeks, so I'll be intrigued to see what actually happened.
Well, and if he needs a new team, I mean, Arizona is...
Well, I mean, he's
really
been talking about how
warm,
he thinks the team's given up on him, and he was actually kind of, I mean, there was an article I was reading talking about how he felt slighted even after last year's Super Bowl, so leading up to it. So, I mean, that's why seemingly they were trying to trade him. Obviously, like we were talking about the trade to New Orleans, part of the trade to get Cooks to the Patriots, and when he's gone, I'm
not surprised.
No.
I'm not surprised. This is the thing about this Patriots franchise. No one is special to the Patriots. They've got maybe 3 players total that they would think of as special players that they're not ever going to get rid of. Tom Brady obviously being one of those, Gronkowski probably being one of those, and it's just that this team is like, yeah, you want us to Super Bowl. Thanks. Appreciate that. We're going to trade you,
Oh, yeah.
They have no problem. I mean,
they're all business.
It's amazing that this team, they're all business. And that's great. I mean, it wins Super Bowls. It's won more Super Bowls with this particular regime than any other regime in history.
Right.
But at the same time, you've got players like Malcolm Butler that they're going to look at there and say, I can't believe that you're not you're not utilizing me the way you should utilize me. I've won you a Super Bowl. Literally. In the last play of a Super Bowl, I was the hero. But they don't, that's the thing, they don't care, because they know how to win.
Right. And that was his rookie year, too, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
It was. No one had ever heard of him before. And he pulled off, of course, boneheaded play by the Seahawks,
right.
And you got Marshawn Lynch back there, and you got to throw the ball. We covered that, but the last thing I'll talk about with the Super Bowl is, of course, you got to talk about the guy that will never ever have to pay for a drink or a meal in Philadelphia ever.
No,
and that's Nick Foles. I mean, here's a kid that comes back contemplating retirement, just like CJ said last show, was almost out of football. They brought him back. He was traded, became the backup, and then Wentz goes down. He steps in, takes him a little bit of time, but he gets that offense down and suddenly rips people apart. And in the last 2 games, I don't know if you guys covered the numbers on this. I can't remember, but in the last 2 games that he played, the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game, he had over 70% completion rate.
Right.
That is absolutely ridiculous.
Oh yeah, over that 2-game span, he was insane, incredibly efficient.
He was absolutely insane. And yeah, right. And I gotta say this: I listened to another podcast a couple days ago. They were talking about Nick Foles, and they were talking about him possibly going to other teams. And the guy I was listening to goes, "Well, I think it's stupid that they're thinking about this. I mean, let him have his moment in the sun, but then put him back on the bench. He's not, he has not been a good quarterback throughout his career." This is what he said, and they all kind of snickered and laughed about it. I couldn't believe it, what I was listening to. I'm sitting there going, the disrespect is just amazing to me, because here's a guy that in 2013 had a lights-out season. He's a Pro Bowler. He holds a record, an NFL record, tied with Peyton Manning for touchdown passes in a single game, 7. I watched that game. It was phenomenal.
Right.
When he's been with a team that utilizes him the way he's supposed to be utilized and believes in him, he has played well. He's played very well. He's got all the physical tools. The guy's 6'6", 228 pounds. He's a big, good quarterback with a good arm. Now, you put him over there with the Rams with Jeff Fisher. We saw what happened with that. Jared Goff looked like nothing in that offense. So Nick Foles had no chance.
Nobody looked good with Jeff Fisher. And then
no
obviously,
one looked good.
I was going to say, and then a backup with the Chiefs last year, we didn't really get a good glimpse of him. So, this was the first time we've seen any extended exposure with him.
And I really like what we saw. He had absolutely no jitters. He was patient. He went through his progressions. This is a guy that went toe-to-toe with Tom Brady and kicked his butt. And he just played phenomenally well. So, here's what I say about this. They're snickering, saying, he's Nick Foles. Well, you think that's funny? You put him on a team. Let's say, he comes to my Arizona Cardinals, which is a really good landing spot for him, because we need a quarterback. We need a bridge quarterback, and he would fit in pretty well there, because imagine him running that RPO, and his options to pass to or to hand off to are David Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, and J.J. Nelson.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be funny to any of the teams on the other side of that ball, honestly.
No. But no, like you said, he now that because obviously he's been to the Pro Bowl before, so we know he has this in him. Obviously, he's shown that he can't overcome a bad system, but I don't think he's going to willingly go to a bad system. And he's never really had a chance to sign most places. Most of the time, he's been traded. I like the chances from the future, obviously under contract for another year, probably going to get traded because the Eagles, someone's going to pay up for him. They're going to probably get a king's ransom for him, though I can see a world where the Eagles hold on to this guy because Carson Wentz injured really, really late. Who knows if he's going to be truly back and ready by the time that training camp comes along. And these injuries, they usually take a year to really kind of rehab and go through a season before the following year where they're actually back to their normal range of motion, their normal explosion, their normal just playing ability. But yeah, no, like you said, he did a great job dueling with Tom Brady, like we covered last week. He had about 130 less yards. He did have an interception, but he also caught a touchdown, and Brady fumbled at an essential moment. So it was
wasn't much of an interception.
No, it was completely Alshon Jeffrey's fault. Yeah,
Alshon Jeffrey going, here, catch this.
Alshon Jeffrey, to be fair, highly contested. He had one arm that was really tied up at the time. It could have been pass interference. He almost caught it with, his right hand, and while he was going down, he kind of chucked it up in the air right into the arms of the safety. It was bad. Right. So, no way it was that Nick Foles' problem. But, to your point, Nick Foles, obviously throw out the Atlanta Falcons game because that was just not a offensive game at all from either side. But, yeah, his last two games, 352 yards and 3 touchdowns, 373 yards and 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. That's a great 2-game stretch from the NFC Championship game to the Super Bowl. So, Super Bowl MVP, we've seen this in Baltimore. You win that award, you get paid. So odds are someone's going to penny up for him, and it's probably just a matter of time, honestly. So, a great game.
And you look at Philadelphia's, what do they save if they trade him? $8 million against the cap? Trade him?
It's not much.
And get one of these. It's not a lot, but at the same time, $8 million, that could sign you a pretty decent corner or a pretty good player. So it would save the money to trade him. I don't know. If I was in Philly, I wouldn't be so quick to get rid of him. Like you said, with Carson Wentz, we don't know. It's kind of a question mark.
Right.
But I think someone's going to pony up the dough and end up with him on their team.
Let's see. So this year, if they keep him, it's a $7.6 million cap hit. If they cut him, it's 5.4. But they're not going to cut him. They're obviously going to trade him. But that's his current contract as it is right now, with options to have him for 3 years following that. Which again, he's not going to be in Philly probably for the long haul. It will be interesting to see who pennies up for him. This is a guy in the prime of his career. He's 29 years old. He's shown that he can put it together, and we'll see. I just laugh at the people who say, "Oh, well, Foles should start over Wentz next year," which no, he shouldn't, and he won't.
As much as I like Foles, I would completely disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, Wentz is the one that got them there, and as we'll talk about Carson Wentz in the upcoming segment, rightfully deserved to be the starter of that team, though Nick Foles did a phenomenal job in relief. And again, he's been to the Pro Bowl before, so you know he's got this in him. So yeah, but we got to keep moving. So let's move on to some of our top headlines from around the league, and we'll start with the league-wide headlines. And this is kind of funny because we even track this if you follow us on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. Oh, we retweeted a lot of this stuff as the news was breaking. So of course, New England Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels signed on as the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, and then later that day, just kidding, no, he didn't. He's back to New England as the offensive coordinator. This is after the Colts official Twitter page was tweeting out all this stuff, all their social media was like, welcome this guy, running all these articles, and then he apparently called and talked to GM Chris Ballard and said, sorry, can't do it. Now, I mean, they had agreed on, he had been there for, obviously, we reported as this was going through the postseason, he had been there for multiple interviews. He had been hiring assistants, having them bring people in. He was bringing some people over with him that apparently have signed on already. He had done everything except for actually put pen to paper and sign the actual deal. So now the Colts are left reeling. They don't have a head coach. They put all their eggs into this basket and basically screwed. So obviously this has led to a lot of narratives, which we'll talk about in a second. Reportedly, what kind of happened here was New England, and I've been covering this pretty close. I've been trying to follow this as much as I can because it's interesting. The reportedly New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft and head coach Bill Belichick sat down with him. They had a long meeting. They tried to convince him to renege on his contract and stay in New England. They apparently gave him a raise. The amounts and the specifics are not yet public. At least I haven't been able to find them. Reportedly, he was not given assurances that he would be the next New England Patriots head coach, which has been a wildly speculated thing because we don't know Bill Belichick's future in the long run. Retirement has been a topic for the last couple seasons. I believe he's got, just the 2018 season still under contract, Bill Belichick. So the assumption here is, that New England expressed how much they wanted to hold on to this guy. Rumors are that they gave him a raise that makes him competitive with other head coaches, and we assume probably when Bill Belichick decides to call it a career that Josh McDaniels will probably step up, be the next head coach of the team.
He better hope he does.
He's going to be mad if he doesn't. We know that they wanted to keep some consistency here. They just lost their defensive coordinator. They wanted to keep the offense together with Tom Brady, who will be 41 next year. And Bill Belichick, we don't know. We've even started hearing things that they might trade him, which I doubt. But, I mean, what was it? They were saying the Giants might make an aggressive trade for Bill Belichick, which kind of made me laugh. But we'll see. And now McDaniels also has come out and said apparently that he wanted to stay for his family and his kids. All of his kids are in school here. His family's settled here. He thought this was best for his family. There's been a lot of narrative saying that this was a Patriots revenge for Deflategate because obviously the Colts are the ones that brought that whole thing to light, which is kind of funny because, with the old regime, they had this just hatred back and forth. But with the new regime that's kind of worked their way in over the last year in Indianapolis, they've worked 2 trades with the Patriots this past season. One with them trading Dwayne Allen there. The other side, them obviously getting Jacoby Brissett. So we thought that was kind of behind them. That's kind of been the news as people were talking, and now it seems like fires have been reignited. As Indianapolis Colts general manager Chris Ballard said at the end of a press conference he had the following day, so this was Wednesday, he was very civil during it. I watched the whole thing. And then at the end, he just kind of smugly says, the rivalry is back on. Kind of makes you laugh because they haven't had a real rivalry since, Peyton Manning was there. But apparently this is a thing. They apparently are pretty sour about it, as much as he's been very political throughout the process. The Colts have reportedly requested a number of interviews for head coaching candidates, including New Orleans Saints tight end coach / assistant head coach Dan Campbell. Also, that we know of so far, Buffalo Bills defensive line coach Leslie Frazier. The ball's rolling, but now the Colts are very behind the 8 ball here. So it'll be interesting to see what they do and how this kind of moves forward. We'll see. So yeah, that's the roller coaster that is the Josh McDaniels saga just over the last 3-4 days.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And Bob Lamont, his agent, actually dropped him as a client, which kind of makes sense because Bob Lamont also represents Chris Ballard as a client. So he kind of had to drop one of them. He couldn't keep them both after this situation.
Right.
But this is the crazy part about this is that, like they said, they gave no assurances that McDaniels would be the head coach following Bill Belichick.
Nothing that's come out publicly yet, at least.
You know what? He better. He had better, because if he doesn't, he has burned every single possible bridge for him to go be a head coach anywhere else in the NFL, because he has shown two things to the NFL right now that do not make a very good head coach. The first one is wishy-washiness. Tells them, I'm going to be your head coach, and I'm going to do all this. You know what? Never mind. I'm not going to do that. You don't want a head coach that's like that at all.
No.
You don't want a head coach that makes a decision and then just changes that decision at the last second. You know what? Now. And leaves an entire franchise in a lurch. Secondly, he's shown them that he's afraid. He's scared. He doesn't think he can be as efficient with another team. He's got to hide behind, Daddy's hoodie over there in New England.
Yeah,
I'm unimpressed. I've lost a lot of respect for Josh McDaniels. I was hoping that maybe that my Arizona Cardinals would make a run at him as a coach. Obviously, now I'm happy that didn't happen. Yeah. But I'm very disappointed in what I'm seeing out of Josh McDaniels. I think that this is a horrible move, and I don't think if I'm a decision maker in the NFL and someone brings up his name when I'm looking for a coach, I'm just just hit the nope button. It's not going to happen.
Well, he's got experience as a head coach. He's sought after. I definitely see your argument, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think that this is the guy that they had in line, and they want to.
I mean, if you were running a team, if you were a GM, would you take a shot on him? Because now think about the situation that Indianapolis is in. They missed out on a bunch of top candidates because they thought they had their guy.
Yep.
And not only that, anyone that they hire knows they're second choice.
Well,
they're
obviously.
not first choice, and second at best.
Well, people interview for these jobs all the time and don't get them, so I don't think it's necessarily that, but I completely do get your point. And, I don't think he'll ever be the Indianapolis Colts head coach now, but, we'll see how this plays out. Obviously, in a couple years, we'll know, but I assume that McDaniels will probably one day be the head coach of the New England Patriots based on just the way this kind of played out, but we'll see. I could be wrong. But we got to keep moving because we have a lot to get to. So we'll go to Minnesota, where the Vikings have hired Philadelphia Eagles quarterback coach John Filippo as their new offensive coordinator. So, sorry, CJ. I know CJ's a big fan. So, yeah, we'll see how that plays out with New England's offense next year. But first they have to sign a quarterback, so we'll see how that plays out as well. Hey, offseason. Minnesota does, yeah.
You said New England.
I'm still stuck on Josh McDaniels. No, yes, the Minnesota Vikings need, obviously the Patriots have a quarterback, though they need a backup probably. But yes, the Vikings need to make decisions on their quarterbacks since they have 3 that are entering free agency right now, as we all know. Let's go to the quarterback position, in fact, and let's go to San Francisco, where the 49ers have signed quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo to a 5-year, $137.5 million contract. Jimmy Garoppolo, a guy who has started how many games in his career? Like, I think
7,
something like that. He
is it 7? I think.
I think it's 8. Because he had 6 games.
How many has he won though?
All of them. Yeah,
exactly.
He's undefeated in the league, and he had two games with the Patriots. Was it 2 years ago? And then obviously 6 games with the 49ers. That's pretty insane. Let's break this down for a second. So Jimmy Garoppolo, a guy who went from being, second or third string with the Patriots? I've already kind of forgotten. Backup quarterback for the Patriots.
Second string.
Traded middle of the year. You're right. Middle of the year to the 49ers. Kind of helps them get on a winning spree as they go. So obviously the 49ers have a lot of love for this guy. He's now the highest paid player in league history on a per-year basis. And in his time there, in 6 games, he threw for 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, so not the best ratio in the world, 1,500 yards, and had a passer rating of 96.2. So mildly inflated, or is this just the cost of a starting quarterback, a franchise quarterback in this league, Jason? I ask you.
I tell you this, I think that this may be considered mildly inflated just because of the sheer number, but also you got to look at a couple things. First off, he's already a winner. He's already proven he can win. He came into a San Francisco team that was in full-on rebuild mode. Just got themselves a new coach. just got themselves a new GM, completely new offense, basically. They're revamping everything. He comes in and wins 6 games. That is absolutely ridiculous. Plus, you're talking about a kid that sat with the best franchise, arguably, in NFL history, behind one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, with one of the greatest coaches of all time, and soaked all that information and knowledge in, and now he's your franchise quarterback, and he has not lost a game yet. Yeah, you're damn right. I'd pay him this much, too.
Yeah. You know how many games the 49ers won last year?
6.
6. They won 6 games.
Yeah.
So, there's something to be said there for sure. So, I mean, hey, the 49ers have their guy of the future. He's got, was it $74 million guaranteed, I believe? And, yeah, the next 5 years. So that's a lot of money. That's going to be a big boy cap hit, but the 49ers had the most cap to spend as of now.
And they spent it in the right place, man.
Look, we have seen that you need a quarterback in this league, though some could argue that it was kind of disproved from the championship games this year because we had essentially 2 backup quarterbacks, a guy who people can't decide if he's even going to be on the team next year, and Tom Brady as the 4 quarterbacks competing in the AFC, NFC championship games. So, you can make a point in any way if you find, if you dig for the right facts. So just pointing that out. But yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo, a guy we all like in a Kyle Shanahan system, who was really good, though, with Kyle Shanahan. The touchdown-interception ratio, I'm not letting that skew me too much. I watched his tape. He was good. And I think with a whole offseason to learn this system as they surround him with some better weapons, he's going to be a sneaky fantasy option. So that's something that we're definitely going to want to keep an eye on going forward. Let's keep it moving. Let's go to the wide receiver position, and we'll go to Los Angeles, where ESPN Los Angeles expects that the Rams will release wide receiver Tavon Austin. To this, I say, duh.
Interesting.
Was it CJ that tried to argue me on this? I was kind of making this point for the last couple weeks. Tavon Austin, yes, at a time was their number 1 weapon. He was their top wide receiver. And you don't have to go really far back to find it. It was just 2 years ago, in 2016 season, he was their guy. Well, last year, they brought in a bunch of wide receivers. He became 4th weapon on their depth chart. He finished the year with 13 receptions for 47 yards and no touchdowns. And yet, this is a guy who they are going to have to pay $8 million next year if they hold on to him. But they have a out built into his contract. They can cut him for $5 million, which is still a pretty decent cap hit. But then they're free. They're done. No more dead cap after that. So I could see this as definitely a way to. I assume they like the guy because they used him in a lot of creative ways. They used him rushing more than they did for receiving. He had actually 59 rushing attempts last year. He did run 1 in for a touchdown. So, trick plays and whatnot. But he can't justify that cap hit being, a 4th wide receiver on a team. Not surprised here. The out was built into the contract. I expect them to exercise it. So, yeah, Tavon Austin probably hitting the free agent market, but I wouldn't be surprised if he resigns with the Rams at a lower rate. Let's move on to Carolina, where Panthers wide receiver Curtis Samuel needs ankle surgery to repair both a broken bone and ligament damage in his ankle. And this is following, of course, his Week 10 injury. So that's rough. That'll be a tough recovery, but hope he gets a speedy return. Not rookie, he was 2nd year, but a young player with a lot of upside. And then let's go to the tight end position, where Monday Morning Quarterbacks Albert Breer stated that the New England Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski's rumblings, quote, about retirement are real, end quote. So things may be heating up a little bit. People with everybody's kind of dismissing this, but now people are getting the thought that there might be some truth to this, some tread to this. So I don't know, Jason, what do you think?
Well, I've heard some rumors of him talking about an acting career, trying to get into acting.
I heard something about that.
Yeah, and apparently he's friends with The Rock, and some other people, and they're kind of talking to him, hey, you should act. He's got a personality, and he could probably do well in some action movies and stuff like that. The bottom line here is this. Gronkowski's hurt every single season. Every single season he gets hurt, which makes sense. I mean, he's a tight end. He goes over the middle, he takes big, huge whacks, and he keeps on rumbling. I understand. I understand why he would want to retire right now. Will he retire right now? I don't think he will. I think he'll play at least another year, maybe 2. He loves the game. He loves to play. This is a former Arizona Wildcat like myself and Nick Foles. These guys are gritty. I think he's going to play another year. Now, if he gets hurt next year again, then I wouldn't be surprised if he goes ahead and hangs it up.
Yeah. Well, he'll be 29 next year. You say you think he plays for 2 more years. He's got 2 years left on his contract. He stands to actually make the most money out of any year of his career this year. He stands to make just under $11 million this year. But this is also the year that they actually have a out in his contract. They can cut him for only $4 million. I don't expect that to happen. I mean, obviously, a huge piece of their offense, and of course, we've kind of been talking about this a little bit, especially as of late, that he could go down as the best tight end of all time. He's definitely in the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, plays another couple years, finish your legacy. Acting will be there. He'll have opportunities. He's a personality. He's a party guy. He's got some connections. He'll get some bit roles here and there. There's always a chance to do that later, so we'll see. I think that, like we kind of been saying more than anything, he's banged up right now. They just came off an emotional loss. He's just coming off a concussion, which is probably making him thinking a little bit differently about it. He hasn't had a lot of those. He was fine from it, but I'm sure it rattled him a little bit. We'll see how this is down the line. I could be completely wrong, but I mean, that's just kind of my thought on it right now as a guy playing in the prime of his career. So, yeah, let's see. With that, how are we doing on time? We probably took way too long. If my guess is right, yes, we did. So we're about half an hour into the show, and we have to break down at least, well, we're going to try and get to at least 12 quarterbacks today. So now while you are all here, we are getting to our topic of the day, our 2017 quarterback review. So our goal here is to basically break down what happened. We always talk about don't be that guy who shows up to your draft with a printout of how every player finished the previous year and draft off that, because man, does that steer you wrong almost every single time. So we're going to talk about what they did, how they did what they did, and if it was a mirage, if we think it's sustainable, and how we initially think that they will transition into the following year, that being, of course, the 2018 season. Of course, we'll start right at the beginning, and we'll start with a guy who we all assumed was going to be a number 1 quarterback. He was drafted as a top 5 quarterback last year, in fact, as a top 3, and he's found in this list more often than not, and that is Russell Wilson. Now, I should stress that our rankings here are based on not the standard. This is 6 point per passing touchdown. Just want to put that out there. Russell Wilson finishing at 415.92 fantasy points, setting himself quite apart from the rest of the pack. He is about 50 points higher than the next guy, which will be Tom Brady, as we'll talk about. Spoiler alert. Now, I want to point out, we talked about in recent shows how scoring was really down across the league this year. The top finishers last year, in fact, the top 3 finishers were in the 400s last year. He's the only one to break that 400-point threshold and barely doing it. Last year, Aaron Rodgers, 460. So, I mean, quarterbacks, which are supposed to be this safe play, they felt it too. They were not immune. Now, Russell Wilson, he had an up and down year at times. I mean, he got started a little bit slow, no offensive line, no real running game, so he was actually forced to do a decent amount of running on his own. 586 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns definitely helped his totals here. That really got the ball rolling. Jason, I mean, this is a guy in your division. What are your thoughts on Russell Wilson going forward? Because I believe this is a team that knows they need to fix this offense, though their signings thus far have been less than impressive as far as coaching. So, I don't know. Do you think this was a situation? I think it was kind of a perfect storm, personally, of people that should have finished ahead of him were hurt for at least periods of time, if not throughout the season, and just being forced to put it all on his back. He kind of just he did what he does. Russell Wilson got it done. So, what are your thoughts here on Russell Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line here is that Russell Wilson has to be Superman on every single play. You know, he's got to save every single play, because they don't have the personnel on the offensive side of the ball to have a lot of playmakers. They couldn't even get Jimmy Graham as involved as they should. Now, Jimmy Graham had a great year, but he should have had a much better year. I mean, honestly, we were expecting very big numbers out of Jimmy Graham, and we didn't really get those. And part of that is because Russell Wilson was running for his life every single down. Yeah, I think this is a mirage. I think that this is, like you said, the perfect storm of certain players getting injured. We'll talk about several of these guys as we go down this list. But yeah, I don't expect Russell Wilson to be number 1 on this list again anytime soon.
Well, I think he'll be a safe quarterback 1, but I don't know if he'll be the top elite guy. I mean, they need more weapons. Jimmy Graham, like we like you already mentioned, he didn't quite reach what we thought he would, though he did get it going as the season rolled on. No running game to speak of. They had 5-6 different running backs that were in there at times, and none of them got even to like the 400 rushing yard threshold. Per ESPN, talking quarterback, well, just not quarterback, but we'll be talking throughout this entire thing. One big thing that I look at is consistency consistency rankings. They have it broken down a little bit stricter than I would have had it, but quarterbacks, they have their studs having a top 2 performance, a start being in the top 10, and then basically a dud being if you finish outside of a quarterback 2. He was the most consistent quarterback among these settings. He had 11 that were start-worthy. He was a top 10 quarterback, 3 of which that he was a stud, and only 2 games where he really, really let you down. So good, but again, kind of forced to do so with his legs. So it's kind of scary having that going forward because all it takes, we've seen this in the past. Russell Wilson, he scrambles, he gets hit, he gets banged up, and then his numbers go down the toilet. Look at just last year. In 2016, he finished as the quarterback 15. So from 15 to first, he's one good hit away from
Quite
that.
A jump.
Yes, I understand that running quarterbacks are gold in fantasy football. I mean, that's a lot of points to be made there. Obviously, they get a lot more points for those rushing yards than they do for the rushing yard. 1 point for 25 yards passing, but 1 point for every 10 yards rushing. So it's great there. And in every format, if they rush the ball in for a touchdown, it's 6 points. So I get the argument. But it is always risk-reward. Russell Wilson is one of those guys who has not given us a real reason to be concerned other than injuries, so I will concede that I like him for the future, but I can tell you right now, in my rankings going forward, I will not have him as my quarterback 1. He is currently going as the number 3 quarterback, however, as the 11th pick in the 4th round. He was drafted as the number 3, as the 3rd pick in the 6th round, so some consistency there. People believe in him, and I don't know. If you had to guess, Jason, obviously this is very early for us in our rankings. You don't think he'll finish number 1. Neither do I. But
no.
I safely think he'll probably be a number 1 quarterback, top 12. Do you feel like he'll land maybe in the upper half of that, or are you more worried about injury? He's getting further into his career, maybe later than that in the rankings.
Well, partially it's worrying about him getting into the latter part of his career, but also you got to look at the talent that is emerging around him with these other quarterbacks and guys that are going to probably be healthy next year, and you got guys that didn't make it into the top 12 because of injury. And if they weren't injured, one Aaron Rodgers is a perfect example. He's going to be higher than Russell Wilson. And then you add in the fact that Russell could possibly get injured, and it's getting more and more likely that could happen unless they bolster that offensive line. Yeah, I agree. I think that he would be down in the bottom part of the quarterback 1s, but I still think he will be a quarterback 1.
We will obviously see how he plays out going forward, and a lot more stuff to get to. Let's move on, though, to Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady, he didn't have the best year he's ever had, but he had a good one. What was it, 4,500 yards? He actually led the league in yardage, which his total in yardage was it was 45.77. That's one of the lowest totals that they've had, I think, since the early 2000s for the high score of the league. So that just kind of shows you how even yardage was down across the league. But he finished as the number 2. He was drafted as the number 2. He's going as the number 2, so everybody's kind of expecting him to keep this up. Tom Brady, 32 touchdowns, the most yardage in the league, 4,577 yards. He had, I believe, the most attempts as well with 385 attempts, so he was busy. He had to do this through spurts of the year with having some of his top weapons down. Obviously lost Julian Edelman incredibly early, Malcolm Mitchell. I don't know. What do you think, Tom Brady, going to year 41? I think my projection of him will be widely different depending on what happens with the Gronk news.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's his safety blanket, his favorite target. So that is going to play a role. But it's Tom Brady. The one thing that you know is as long as Tom Brady and Bill Belichick are together, you can always pretty much bank on Tom Brady. He's being a top quarterback. So I think he will finish in the upper part of the quarterback 1. I don't know if he'll be number 2, but I would definitely look for him to be in the top 5.
Yeah. So let's see. He obviously better than 2016 where he missed a couple years, but not as good as his 2015. He had more yardage, more touchdowns. Maybe we're seeing a trend. Maybe Father Time's catching up to him. We'll see. He wants to play for at least another 4 years.
I wouldn't count on it.
But look,
wouldn't count on it.
We now know, right? Now we know there is consistency there. Josh McDaniels is back. We assume that he's going to be getting a bunch of his wide receivers back. They will do their best to surround him with new talent. Brandon Cooks obviously stepped up, and with another year there, I think will help develop the offense. If Gronk comes back, look, all the pieces are there. Josh McDaniels knows how to use him, maximize his strengths. I still contest, he's not one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. He's not that guy.
No.
They use him in this way that always is producing a very good end-of-year stat line. So, Tom Brady, next year, where do you think he ends up?
Like I said, I think top 5. I haven't statted all this out yet and actually done my projections. But if I had to just throw a guess out, I'd say 3rd, number 3.
Now, he was the number 3 most consistent quarterback based on ESPN's rankings again. He had 3 where he was a stud, or 2 where he was a stud, 8 games where he was startable, and only 2 games where he completely crapped the bed. So consistent for 40, yeah, and I think that as long as all these weapons are back with the consistency at offense, he's going to make a nice bid for being one of these top 6 quarterbacks they're going to be taking. So those top quarterback ones, those every week starters. So I buy the ranking here, and again, he's going as the number 2. So I can see it. I can get the argument. Let's go on to the number 3 guy, who surprisingly, I mean, this just shows you what an amazing year he was having. This guy was, and we've mentioned on the show a couple times, was in contention for, and definitely the conversation for NFL MVP, and even though he missed a couple games at the end of the year, and that is Carson Wentz of the Philadelphia Eagles, going for 347 yards, or points, fantasy points. Now, people are admittedly a little timid on this. He finished number 3 based on 6 point per passing touchdown range. He was the 2nd most consistent quarterback in the league, and a lot of that was done with his legs, but he's currently going as the number 15 quarterback, as the 12th pick in the 9th round, basically a double-digit round pick. And honestly, I don't mind that, and the reason is kind of things we've already mentioned, and especially with recency, people being scared off by injured quarterbacks, thinking about Andrew Luck. Carson Wentz got hurt late in the season, so you really, really have to wonder, is he going to be truly back? Even if he's out there playing, an injured quarterback, it translates to the performance, especially a guy who runs the ball. I mean, he ran for almost 300 yards this year. It's pretty effective, and obviously got hurt on a rushing play. At least I believe it was, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah, it was. Outside of a quarterback one, it's shocking to hear, but it doesn't necessarily faze me. What are your thoughts here, Jason?
Well, like you said, I mean, he's hurt. He got hurt, and he got hurt late, and he got hurt with something that takes a while to come back from. Will he be back? Yes. I think he'll be back next year. I think he'll play. I think he'll play the majority of the season, if not the entire season. But do I want to put him in my top 12 quarterbacks? Oh, man, I don't know. I mean, if he hadn't been injured, absolutely. I mean, the way he was playing lights out before he got injured. In fact, I believe he was the number 1 quarterback in fantasy before he was injured.
At that time, yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Yeah, at the time. Just because of that, I'd say I think he will. I think he'll finish in the top 12. I think on the lower end of the top 12, maybe 11 or 12. But there's too much talent there. There's too many weapons. This team is just too good. They have a great defense. I think he'll get the opportunity to still be a quarterback 1.
Yeah, for me, what scares me about Carson Wentz is his efficiency. He was unbelievably efficient this year, and a huge statistical jump as well. He went from a 79.3 passer rating his rookie year to a 101.9 average on the season. He was incredibly efficient. He had 33 touchdowns in 13 games. I mean, he was just lighting it up on 440 attempts. I mean, that's ridiculous. 60% completion ratings. It's just the injury that scares me. I've seen injured quarterbacks come back too soon, and they just aren't ready.
It's true. I mean, look. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I mean, look at Andrew Luck.
That's true.
We were you and I specifically were convinced he was going to come back.
Everything was saying he would. We were misled by the Colts, just like everybody else.
Exactly right. In this particular case, I get he's younger. Okay, Wentz is younger. So he's gonna probably be able to heal a little bit faster. But the bottom line is this: we've seen his floor and we've seen his ceiling. And if the truth is somewhere between the floor and the ceiling, he's still going to end up as a quarterback 1.
See, I'm worried that they're going to do their best to contain him and protect him this year, because I really don't think he's going to be 100% this year. I don't think it's possible. I think he's going to play through. He's going to be a little bit stiff. And I know it's not a great comparison, but like one instance that I've seen and monitored very closely was Joe Flacco coming off that ACL-MCL tear they had a couple years ago. And the entire following year, he was notably more timid. He was not scrambling as well. He wasn't running as well. He was getting sacked. He looked scared when rushers were coming at him. I'm not saying that's going to be Carson Wentz. I'm not going to say it's even going to play out necessarily the same way, but it will affect him on some level. The efficiency I expect to drop. I think they're going to protect him, so I don't think he's going to be able to create as many plays. I think they're going to run the ball more. I think they're going to try and keep him in the pocket more. And, who knows? 2019 Carson Wentz could be right back to this, but I think they're going to be really careful with him because he is their franchise quarterback next year. Going forward, but I think they're going to be careful with him next year. I'm worried that he's not going to be able to repeat this efficiency. Like you said, I think he will be a good option. I don't think he's going to be the number one, as he was on pace to be. I don't think he's going to be a upper echelon, top half quarterback one. I could see a streaming world where he makes a lot of sense, but it's going to be really more interesting to tell as we watch the season, the offseason specifically, progress, how he's coming along, how he's looking in camp. And, we talk about all this coach speak, and it is all crazy levels in the offseason, of course. We'll have to see.
About to start up, too.
It scares me, honestly, is what it is. I think he's going to go way too high because right now he's going as, like I said, the number 15 quarterback off the board. I expect that we're going to see this stuff, that he's good, he's back, he's doing well, and then he's going to start flying up the boards. But I will not be on that bidding war.
His life.
But we'll hear the best shape of his life argument. I guarantee it, even coming off the ACL injuries. But I'm not going to buy it because I've seen this too many times where the quarterbacks, or any players really, they come back from that injury. Most of the time, they're not the same player, at least not for that first year. And his legs are a big part of what made his game so special. I wish CJ was here to weigh in, but of course he's not today. So I don't know. So that's a lot of time on Carson Wentz. He was phenomenal. We'll see how he translates to next year. Let's move on to a guy who will command a lot of conversation this offseason. Number 4 quarterback on the season was Alex Smith, 347.18 fantasy points, just a couple points behind Carson Wentz. By a couple points, I mean decimal points. He, of course, is on a new team. So, Alex Smith, Jason, what do you think the long-term appeal is for Alex Smith in Washington now? As we talked about when he first made the trade, yes, Gruden is there. He's in a decent offense, but I don't like his weapons. I don't like the system for him as a fit. There's just some things that really concern me here. And obviously for Washington, we argued this was kind of a downgrade. We all like Alex Smith. We think he's a very good quarterback. We think he's not necessarily a game manager, but definitely a step above. Here he finished as the number 4 quarterback. But I'm concerned that a lot of what he did this year was the unbelievable talent of the players around him, making plays after the catch. I don't know. How do you project him next year? I think a lot of people share my sentiment because he's currently going as the 21st quarterback off the board. So people are obviously scared post-trade. He's going in the 13th round.
Yeah. In this particular case, people are smart. Don't do it. I won't do it. I can't see him as a quarterback one. He is on a much worse team than he was on this last year. He was on a very, very good coach team this last year. And he had some amazing talent around him. Like you said, Tyreek Hill is an absolute freak. Travis Kelce, one of the best tight ends in football. He had a brand new young running back in Kareem Hunt that was just tearing it up. He's not going to have that in Washington. Their running back situation is murky. Their wide receivers, it's murky. The tight end situation, we all know about the Jordan Reed situation.
Right.
He's not in a good way, and he's a new face in this new place. He has got no rapport with any of these people.
Right.
And as we've mentioned many, many times, and I'm sorry, Redskin fans, but this team is badly run. It is a bad organization with a bad management team. It's not well run. So
don't hate us, Washington fans.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry about this. But the bottom line is, I don't trust Alex Smith in this situation because, and of no fault of his own, he's a very good, as you mentioned, he's a very good quarterback. I'm very high on Alex Smith, but he is in a no-win situation right now because he doesn't have any talent around him. He does not have the backing of a good franchise who wants to win. I mean, they want to win, but they're not a good franchise. So I agree with the sentiment of the mock drafts right now. I would not take this guy as a quarterback one, or maybe not even a quarterback two.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was like Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt making crazy plays after the catch, Travis Kelce being a mismatch. I mean, he did a lot. Let's not forget, everyone thinks of him as this game manager. Let's not forget, he also made a lot of plays with his legs. He had 60 rushing attempts this year, which is not his career high by a long shot, which also kind of gives you a thought of how his game is. He had 355 rushing yards. He actually averaged almost 6 yards a carry, so he's better than a lot of running backs. 1 rushing touchdown, but I mean, that's scrambling, making plays, developing time, and obviously then taking off with the ball is a huge part of his game. And I don't think he's got obviously, like you said, the running game, they're not going to respect that as much. They're going to spy him. They're going to blitz him. They're going to try and get after him. And this is a guy who, years in the system in Kansas City, finally had his career year, which is why they're moving him, I think, also, besides the fact that they have a rookie they like a lot. His career numbers are 4,042 yards and 26 touchdowns. that's not someone that I want to spend a high draft capital on in my fantasy league. Because, I mean, look, as much as we like a guy, as good as we think they are at real-life football, this is fantasy football, and the stats are what translate to points. And if we want to win, we need those points. Like you said, my argument that I always bring up, the new face in a new place, that is a proven thing. He's got to go to a new system, though I think, honestly, a system that might eventually meld with him, but I don't expect it to be a first-year kind of, because it's so different from what he was running. I don't think it's going to be a great mend. I don't like his wide receiver options as much, though I think he's got a wider core. None of them are nearly as talented as the ones that he was working with. I don't like the landing spot. So I have to agree with the people who are drafting him right now. Finished number 4, going as the number 21. So he's basically going undrafted right now, essentially, because at 13th round, he's either going to be drafted in your leagues or he's not. I can't fault it. I'm sure we'll see some great tape. We'll see all this stuff like, oh, well, he is on pace. He's had these off-season camps with his wide receivers, this, that, the other. But bottom of the line,
the shape of his life.
The best shape of his life. I mean, it doesn't necessarily apply as much to a quarterback, but yeah, you're right. It just doesn't matter to me for a quarterback who's only thrown 4,000 yards once in his career, and 26 touchdowns was his career high. It's just not great numbers when we're talking about other quarterbacks who have drastically eclipsed that almost every year of their career. I mean, even Russell Wilson, who we all think as a rushing quarterback, threw for 34 touchdowns this year. So, yeah. We'll see. Alex Smith. Number 5, Cam Newton. 343 fantasy points. He is currently going as the number 8 quarterback, though he finished as the number 5, and I think probably for good reason. I wish CJ was here to be the counter argument here, because obviously we are not the biggest Cam Newton fans. Jason and I, we kind of, I'm not going to say we talk down to him, but we are not believers in the narratives that we hear around this guy. Yes, he is consistently, more times than not, a good fantasy option. He's finished in the top more in his career more times than he has not. But his entire career and his entire fantasy value is based widely on his legs. And this is a team that has openly said repeatedly that they want to turn him into a pocket passer. And this is a team that is also seeming to run less and less deep with weapons to try and help him move the ball. They're going to be seemingly trying to get him to even more consistently check down to Christian McCaffrey, shorter options. Greg Olson's another year older, and if he's not running the ball, which, again, a huge part of his game, he threw for 3,300 yards this season. That's it. 22 touchdowns. Both those numbers considerably less than the Alex Smith that we were just talking about. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, 754 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. That's the big translation here, and that's something that the team is trying to keep him from doing as he gets yet another year older. So these are all reasons why Cam Newton scares me, and I think going as the number 8 quarterback, as the second pick in the 7th round, you can make an argument that that's still considerably too high. So, Jason, what are your thoughts here?
No, I completely agree with you. Cam Newton, they're trying to turn him into a pocket passer. You're not going to do that. It's not going to work. He is Cam Newton. The only reason that he is as good as he has been is because of his legs. He can make plays happen with his legs.
Phenomenal athlete.
Absolutely. He makes defenses have to respect the fact that he could take off and run and take it to the house on every play. That's what makes him a good quarterback. You try to take that away from him and say, okay, we just want you to pass the ball now. He doesn't have the accuracy. He doesn't have the mindset to go for that kind of thing. He wants to run. He wants to run and make plays by himself. Yeah, he'll throw the ball down the field, but he wants to run. So as much as they're trying, and they're doing all the right things, honestly, I think the Panthers are doing all the right things. They brought in Christian McCaffrey, great check down option, very talented, can do all the things that Cam Newton can do with his legs, but Cam wants to run. So I don't have any faith in Cam Newton in this situation. I would not draft him this high at all.
Right. Now, I want to point this out. He's going to be 29 next year, so by no means is that old in the scheme of a quarterback. I mean, look at, we're talking about Tom Brady. He'll be 41 next year. But as a running back, he's getting up there. He's still in the prime of his career, but he's getting to the point it's starting to become closer to the end of the prime than not. And that's where he makes his hay. He had 492 passing attempts this year. So, yeah, they got him passing the ball. Not the highest he's ever done, by the way, which was the argument that they want to do here. 3,300 yards, which is the second least he's ever thrown for. 22 touchdowns, which is about average for him, but he got it all done, again, with his legs. 139 rushing attempts, and this is why you can't necessarily believe what you hear, but you know this is the way that they have to be wanting to go, because he gets hurt, he's out, this team runs out of options pretty quickly. 139 rushing attempts for 754 yards. Both of those career highs. So I don't expect that to be the norm. That's definitely not the way they're calling it. I think they're going to try and reel him in. And without that production, he does not remain a viable fantasy option because especially if they try to force him to throw under center, we've seen that he's not super efficient. Great arm, phenomenal athlete, but as a fantasy quarterback just through the air, I mean, even his magical, amazing 2015 season, his outlier on his career, he still didn't break 4,000 yards. He threw for 35 touchdowns, which is by far and away the most he's ever thrown for. The next highest, 24. So, I mean, that's definitely the outlier. It's one of those things where I understand the narrative of Cam Newton in a 4-point per passing touchdown league. He's obviously even way more valuable, but this is a team that's trying to get him away from what he's good at, and that's what scares me. I think they're going to probably try and surround him with better options. They're going to try and protect him, but bottom line, it only takes one play for these scrambling quarterbacks to get hurt. That's why I always say scrambling quarterbacks, these running quarterbacks, risk-reward, and when he inevitably gets hurt, you're out a quarterback, and this is a guy that you're going to have to draft high. Because even with mostly just analyst professionals, people like us that are drafting right now, he's going as the number 8, which I still think is way too high. So I expect with your average player, once we get around to August, I expect him to be going higher than this because based on your scoring format, in some formats he finishes the number 2 quarterback. I think the draft capital you're going to have to put into a guy like Cam Newton is going to be just insanely too high for the risk-reward aspect. I'm not trying to put that kind of risk into my quarterback. I mean, but then again, I have a different narrative than you guys. I stream the position, so, and this is, again, why I wish CJ was here because he's quite the opposite, and he likes Cam Newton. I'd be curious to know when he would take him. But I wouldn't probably take him until probably close to double-digit rounds. But that's when I'm normally looking for a quarterback anyway. And even then, I'd probably wait on it, honestly. I don't think I would invest the draft pick in him. What about you, Jason? What would you do?
Oh, man. I would not draft him. I don't trust him. I have never trusted him. I had him 1 year, and of course that was the year he really let me down. So yeah, like you said, he's a running quarterback. It's a risk-reward situation. The risk is a little bit too great for me. I need a solid quarterback I can rely on, and that's not Cam Newton. So for me, I would not take him until the deep in the double-digit round. He will be gone well before I would even look at him.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I agree on. It's risk reward, and he's honestly to me, I think he's matchup based. I don't think he's proven that he's an every week starter. I mean, the only thing that makes him overcome a lot of these matchups is his legs, and that's going to be less and less as he gets older and older. So we'll see. Who's to say that next year is when he hits the wall? Nobody knows. Could easily be a couple years down the line, but the risk is what we're trying to convey to you guys. So yeah, he had a good year, not a great year. His legs are what got him to having a great fantasy year, but that's the risk. 22 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. Not exactly what you're looking for in your fantasy quarterbacks, and especially if he's not getting that rushing production. But we're harping on this way too much. Let's move on. Number 6, Matthew Stafford. Finished with 331 fantasy points. Now, this is a guy who seems to not be able to get any respect. He was the number 7 quarterback a year ago. This past year, he finished as the number 6 quarterback. So he's consistently hovering around that, reliable fantasy option, yet he's being drafted as the number 18 quarterback right now, as the 10th pick in the 10th round. This is why I wait on quarterbacks, because for some reason, guys like Matthew Stafford, Phillip Rivers, these names that are consistently good, they fall. So, I don't know. He had a good year. Jason, what are your thoughts on Matthew Stafford?
Yeah, he's one of those players that just gets no respect. It's amazing to me. I like Matthew Stafford. I mean, he's got the arm. He's got extreme accuracy. He's got some pretty decent weapons. Now, there's a little concern for this year because he's going to have a new coaching staff. A new head coach, Matt Patricia, stepping in as the head coach now.
Right. But they purposefully left Jim Bob Cooter there because they had a great rapport. Matthew Stafford liked him. He's a defensive-minded head coach, so he's basically leaving Jim Bob Cooter to handle the offense. That's essentially what we're hearing. So I get your point, but I'm not honestly scared by it at all.
Right. Well, which was going to be my next point.
Okay. Fair enough. So, my bad.
It is cause for concern, but not all that much concern. As you mentioned, Jim Bob Cooter sticking around so that I can continue to make fun of his name, which is good for me, and good for Matthew Stafford because he gets to have that consistency. Now, I will say I would love to see him get some new weapons to kind of throw to. As much as I like Marvin Jones and Golden Tate, I think he needs an upgrade a little bit. Another, a nice big receiver to
Kenny
throw
Galladay,
to.
mini Megatron.
I do like Kenny Galladay.
I like him a
lot.
lot.
Like Kenny Galladay.
I just wish that Eric Ebron would actually become what I've been wishing and waiting for him to be.
He's not a thing, man.
I know.
He's not a thing.
It's bad.
You know what, though? I think Eric Ebron is going to be one of those players that moves to a different team and shines. That's what I think is going to happen.
Watch that happen.
But anyway, bottom line here is that I really like Matthew Stafford. We did a mock draft. The show did a mock draft a couple weeks ago,
right?
And I was able to draft Matthew Stafford very deep in the draft, and I was pretty happy with it, And I remember saying, "Yeah, God, I'm very happy with this pick, nice and deep." And it's Matthew Stafford. He's got a very good arm, so I think Matthew Stafford. You should take him once you start getting into those mid rounds, 7th, 8th round. Probably fine. You can probably wait on him though, because people aren't, like you said, people are not respecting him,
right?
And he's fallen down into the double-digit rounds.
I mean, this is a guy who threw for 4,446 yards. I mean, he was just a couple yards behind Tom Brady, who, as I already mentioned, led the league in yardage. So barely under 100 yards. Or over 100 yards away. So, I mean, he was good. Another year with Marvin Jones there, really building the rapport was good. I think that Kenny Galladay is going to come along and really take a big next step. We saw glimpses when he was healthy. I mean, 29 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 4,400 yards. He had a rating of 99.3. He was good. He was the 8th most consistent quarterback. He finished as the number 6 quarterback for fantasy after finishing 7th a year ago, as I already mentioned. I honestly think that this is going to get some traction. I have to assume that we're not going to be the only ones who see this. I think it's glaringly obvious. I think a lot of analysts are going to start talking this guy up, and I think with rankings are going to push him up drafts. But I just, for some reason, don't think he's going to get the respect he deserves, and I think that, honestly, you'll still, even once this is all said and done, come draft season, we'll probably still be able to get him for a bargain, just like we were last year where he was taken as the number 15 quarterback, and we were trying to make a lot of these arguments. And, much like Phillip Rivers always is, and Phillip Rivers is always pretty decent. It's just one of those guys. It's crazy. So, I mean, consistent. He only, what was it? I think it was only he had 4 games where he crapped your team, which is why I think some people are worried about it. But he had 2 games where he won you weeks. He's had 6 games. He was absolutely a top 12 starter. I mean, he was good. Again, a top 8 finish for consistency. That's what you want for a quarterback that finished as in the top 8. He finished in the top 6, in fact. Yeah, I like Matthew Stafford going forward, and I expect them to continue to upgrade around him. They need a running game, and they know it. Let's go to number 7, where we have Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins is going to be darn near impossible to project, so I'm really not even going to try. But Kirk Cousins, he finished with 331 fantasy points, and obviously all the talk that we were talking about, how he is potentially going to be franchise tagged so the team can try and get something for him. Currently going as the 4th quarterback off the board, as the 5th pick in the 10th round, though. People aren't scared. So, Jason, what can we really say? I mean, he was good. He was consistent. He was Kirk Cousins. And he's not going to be the starting quarterback for the Redskins next year. That's all we know at this point.
No, he's not. And that's good for him. I mean, all the things we talked about with Alex Smith, this, lack of weapons and lack of front office, Kirk Cousins has been dealing with for years, and consistently passing for over 4,000 yards. As a matter of fact, he got close to 5,000 yards one year.
Yeah.
This is a guy that I think is going to work in a lot of different systems, depending on where he goes. If he goes to a team that has dynamic pass catchers and weapons, look out. Because, I mean, this guy is going to be a very, very good option every single week, regardless of your matchup.
Yep.
Okay? But if he goes to a bad situation, if he ends up, let's say, I don't know, what's a bad situation? I mean, even Cleveland Browns. I was going to say Cleveland Browns, but even the Cleveland Browns have got some weapons.
The Browns actually have a pretty sneaky, sleepy good wide receiver core.
Absolutely. I mean, Josh Gordon's back. I mean, that guy is a superstar in the making.
Corey Coleman.
Even in that situation, he's going to be in a better situation than he was in as far as his weapons go.
David Njoku.
I mean, they'll need to upgrade his offensive line. David Njoku is going to be great next year.
Yeah.
So I really like Kirk Cousins, even though we don't know where he's going to land. Anywhere he goes, almost, is going to be an upgrade on where he's been.
I think the only place that scares me, looking at the list of potential suitors, is the Jets.
The Bills?
Well, the Bills have some options, but the Jets scare me more.
They do. Well, the Jets. See, this is the thing about the Jets, though, is that they've got. I mean, well, I was going to say they've got Robbie Anderson, but we don't know.
We don't know. They've got Quincy Enunwa. That's about it right now.
They got Quincy Enunwa. I mean, I think they're going to make some moves and pick up some stuff. But yeah, at the moment, looking at the team, yeah, I could agree with that the Jets could be a little bit of a black hole for him to fall into. But he's coming out of another black hole, and he fared pretty well. So other than the Jets, really, honestly, I think anywhere he goes is going to be an upgrade.
I'm trying to look up Austin Seferian-Jenkins' contract because he had an okay year, but I don't. Let me see. Austin Seferian-Jenkins. Oh wow, no, he's a free agent. So yeah, he won't have him.
Oh.
So yeah, basically he's got Quincy Enunwa, and that's the only thing that we know for a fact that he would
Pretty
have
much
if he goes to the Jets. But this is all speculation. Yeah, right. So yeah, but yeah, Kirk Cousins, like you mentioned, I mean, he broke up 4,000 yards, which is all he's done in his 3 years as a starter. He's always gotten you over 4,000 yards. He's always gotten you at least 25 touchdowns or more. He's not a big rushing quarterback, but you wouldn't expect him to be. And he broke 4,000 yards while losing his top 2 wide receivers, not getting anything near adequate replacements for those guys, and having as many would argue, a superstar athletic tight end, a great pass-catching option who's never healthy and was not at almost any point this season. So, I mean, wherever he goes, he is definitely an option. The new place, it's going to be really, really telling how we project him, because it's going to matter, where he goes, the system, the weapons. It's all going to play into, what he's worth. But he's going to go somewhere. We know that. The question is where and how he's going to get there. But, I mean, like we said,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just imagine him landing somewhere like Denver.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this ad nauseum. Imagine him in Denver with Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. I mean, he would be absolutely lights out with those weapons, and a decent running game in C.J. Anderson and Booker. So, yeah, I mean, it's scary to think about where he's going to go. And as far as projecting him forward, I really do think, even as a new face in a new place, I really think we're talking about, is he going to be a low-end one or a high-end one?
I would say low end, because he's got to mesh with new weapons and learn a new system.
Right.
But I could see him, once it's all said and done, finishing the year as definitely a quarterback one, but probably on the lower end. Consistency is a big deal. So we'll see.
Right.
Though we see people go places, they get behind great offensive minds and they mesh. I don't necessarily like the offensive minds in Denver, but I love the weapons. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. Right now, his draft capital as the number 4 quarterback off the board, that's a little rich for all these question marks.
A little high, maybe.
A little high.
Yeah.
So we'll see. That's obviously going to fluctuate wildly as we move through the offseason. Let's go to number 8, a guy we've kind of mentioned a couple times, Phillip Rivers. 326 points. He is still getting no respect. He was drafted as the number 13 quarterback. He is being drafted currently as the number 13 quarterback, as the 5th pick in the 9th round. Yet this is a guy who finished 2 years ago as the number 8 quarterback and finished this year as the number 8 quarterback. That is consistency, ladies and gentlemen. Yep. And yet he's getting no respect. He has so many weapons to throw to. The Chargers have surrounded him with talent, pass catchers at every position, and yet he's not getting respect. So, I don't know. Jason, Phillip Rivers, why do you think he's not getting respect? Recap his season for me. What do you think going forward? You know the drill.
Well, I mean, you had a lot of injury situations going on with this team, a lot of weird stuff as far as that goes. They switched from San Diego to Los Angeles. That's a problem. It throws the whole organization into upheaval. So that's your basic problem right there, is that there's all this inconsistency as far as their situation. But again, you just mentioned it. I mean, he went from San Diego, where he was the number 8 quarterback in fantasy, to Los Angeles, where he was the number 8 quarterback in fantasy. So this is a guy you should not be scared of. This is a guy that is high floor, high ceiling. Because let me tell you something. With all these crazy weapons that he's got to throw to, I am just waiting. There's going to be an explosion season where everything comes together, everybody's healthy, and he's able to get that ball down the field, and their defense plays lights out, and they're going to explode and become one of the highest scoring teams in the league. They can absolutely do that. Phillip Rivers, consistently over 4,000 yards, loves to throw the ball down the field, has got some great weapons, and again, those guys get healthy, and that young rookie that they just got this year, that ridiculously tall, giant, massive rookie that they got, he's healthy.
Williams,
Forget it. He's going to be lights out, and this guy is going to be a high-end one.
Yeah, Mike Williams will be huge. Hunter Henry, well, obviously we don't know the future of Antonio Gates, but, I mean, he's there too. Travis Benjamin,
I think it's
Keenan
better
Allen.
without him.
Yeah.
I think it'll be better without him. I think Hunter Henry becomes the man, gets the opportunity to get on a roll, and look out.
It gives us, obviously, a great tight end for fantasy there. But, I mean, yeah, through all this, he threw for 4,500 yards. He was it 62 yards behind Tom Brady as the passing leader.
Yeah.
28 touchdowns, which was a slight regression, but still around his average for his career. And he's just got weapons. He's got a run game. He's got an offensive line, which is somewhat suspect, but good enough. He's got an okay defense that keeps them in games. I just don't understand why he gets so much hate. Yeah, he's going to be, no, he's already turned 36, so he'll be 36 next year, so he's getting a little bit up there. But guess what, guys? He hasn't missed a game since 2005, which I don't think he necessarily missed a game. He just wasn't starting. So since he took over as a full-time starter in 2006, he's played every single game. He's an Iron Man. He's consistently throwing for somewhere in the 4,000s. He's getting you usually in the high 20s, low 30s in touchdowns. And he's a guy who you can currently get in the 9th round as the 13th quarterback off the board. He's going as the top bench quarterback. And he was consistent. I think he ranked, 8th in consistency rankings? Let me look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 8th in 9th, in consistency rankings. So he had a couple of week-winning performances.
I was going to say 8th last year, 8th this year, and 8th in consistency. That is consistency. Look at that.
Yeah, that would be impressive. So, yeah, I mean, he's a guy that we always talk about as a later streaming option. Once you see 11 other teams draft your quarterback, he's the guy that I'm usually targeting because a lot of these other names that we've already mentioned and a lot of names that we haven't mentioned yet will have been drafted. So, Phillip Rivers, who finished ahead of a lot of those guys next year. I like him. I see no reason to fall off on him, and yet people seem to be. We'll see how that changes going forward, but, again, he was drafted 13th last year. Currently going 13th, so I don't know if it's going to really fluctuate. We'll see. Number 9, we have a guy who generally goes ahead, and he gets so many narratives around him. People kind of are polarized on this guy. They either draft him way too high, or they draft him pretty late. And that is Ben Roethlisberger. 316 fantasy points. He is so he finished number 9. He's currently going as the number 12 quarterback. Maybe it's because people are in flux. They don't know if his playing future of his weapons. I don't know what the narrative necessarily is there that people are concerned about, but that's about where I would take him. He was better this year. He was more consistent. He was the 6th most consistent quarterback, which is good. He's got weapons. He's in a high-powered offense, and I mean, hey, Ben Roethlisberger. Jason, what do you think about Big Ben going forward? Because we've all heard that he's expected to play next year, so I don't think that's part of the narrative. Finished 9, going 12th.
Yeah, I think that right around there is fine. 9th through 12th, somewhere in the low end ones. Talk about weapons. My gosh. I mean, he's got the best receiver in football. He's got one of the best pass-catching running backs in football. He's got Juju Smith-Schuster, who is quickly becoming a dynamo out there. Still got Martavis Bryant, as far as I know, right? I mean, or is that a free agent?
I think a free.
I'm not even sure.
I'll confirm. Keep talking.
Yeah, we'll confirm. But bottom line is he's got tons and tons of weapons. He's got a great defense. This is a guy that consistently is going to get you lots of points and is going to be good. Now, he is also a matchup guy, though. He's a guy you got to look at the matchups and make sure you know. If he's playing away from home, you may want to sit him down because he doesn't play so great away from home as he does when he is home.
Intense home road splints. That's true.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, if you look at what he did this year, when he played some of the top defenses in the league, and he did not play well against those top defenses. In fact, he had a game where he threw 5 interceptions, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, Jacksonville. He's playing Jacksonville, and he threw 5 interceptions. That is not good. So you got to be careful with him. Make sure you check out those home road games, who he's playing, and maybe sit him down when he's got a bad matchup.
Yep, he threw for the most yards this year since 2014, 28 touchdowns, which is not the most in his career, but that's on the upper side of things. I mean, it's pretty decently consistent for that. And, some of the best weapons in the league, like you said. And, yes, Martavis Bryant will be back next year. He's currently under contract, at least we should say. Though we've heard rumblings from the team that they're not too happy with him. We'll see how that plays out. But, the concerns here with Ben Roethlisberger, of course, durability, his commitment, his effort in some cases, because we've heard the retirement talk, and he misses games. He hasn't played a full season since 2014. Maybe there's a connection there. So, things to think about, things to monitor. But, I mean, hey, in good matchups at home, this guy is a absolute streaming option. And he's currently going as a quarterback one, finished as a quarterback one last year, and had a decently high consistency rating this past year. So all these are reasons to not necessarily freak out about him. I've seen some preliminary rankings where people have him down really, really low, and I get it. I've seen things like where people are taking him much higher than that, and where he's going right now, and I get it. So he's, like I said, very polarizing, and we'll see as we get more information about what this team's going to look like moving forward, especially with the future of Le'Veon Bell, which I think we all are kind of expecting him to come back now because that's what we're hearing, and that's a big boost to him and the offense. So, but if he leaves, that could be a big hit to Ben Roethlisberger. We'll see.
Yeah.
Let's see. How are we doing on time? Unfortunately, oh, wow, we're doing terrible on time. All right, these last three guys pretty quick. Jared Goff. He was undrafted last year, finished as the number 10 quarterback, 311 points. Currently going as the number 7, and I can't say I'm surprised. Great year with his first year with Sean McVay. Everyone's expecting with another year with an offseason to build more rapport with his wide receivers. Could take another big step. The number 1 pick in the draft just 2 years ago. What are your thoughts on him going this high as the 8th pick in the 6th round, Jason? Because you take quarterbacks higher than I do.
I look at there's only one negative thing I could say about Jared Goff going forward, and that is that he's not going to surprise anybody next year. Okay, now everybody saw what happened. Everybody knows what this offense looks like and what they're going to see. So they're going to be prepped for him. They're going to be ready for him. However, I don't think it's going to matter. You've got the best running game, basically, in football with Todd Gurley. You've got weapons, and they're going to add some more weapons for him to use. Got a decent offensive line, a very, very good coach. I think that he's just going to progress and get better. He is playing in a tough division. You've got Arizona's defense. You've got the San Francisco 49ers who are getting tougher. You got Seattle, who's still tough. But I still think this guy's going to end up as a 1, probably about a middle-of-the-pack 1 this time.
I could see that being the finish point. I will say that investing in Jared Goff is risk-reward. It's definitely boom-bust. I like all the narrative that I said right now, and that really, that gets you excited. It does. But he's probably going to go too high for me, and I'm concerned about other things. I look at his consistency ranking. He finished as the quarterback 10. He was the 20th most consistent quarterback in the league, so he actually lost you more weeks than he even had startable weeks. And if you combine his startable weeks and his stud weeks, barely edges out those times that he really messed you up. Injuries are concerned. I don't know.
I think a lot of that has to do with rapport, though. I mean,
I would agree.
Rapport with a new coach and all that kind of stuff. I think with a full off season, another full off season, with McVay and getting more rapport with this offense and better acquainted with the offense, I think his consistency will go up.
I agree. I lean towards your side of the argument more than anything. Just trying to play contrarian here, but I mean it's all things you have to take into account. He's not super consistent, but he's also, it was his second year in the league and his first year in a good offensive system with a bunch of new weapons. So, and some of those weapons didn't get there until they were in the preseason already. So, I like Jared Goff going forward. I would like to have some exposure to him next year, but if he goes anywhere around where he's going now in the 6th round, unless it's an auction league, I'm probably not going to have any shares of him, unfortunately. So, it's risk reward, but we definitely are buying into the early narratives that we're expecting him to take yet another step next year. So you could definitely build a story and a thought process to justify that draft pick as the 7th quarterback off the board. Love to deep dive a little bit more, but we got to keep moving. We're already an hour and 20 minutes in, so we'll go to Drew Brees, your number 11 quarterback on the season based on 6-point per passing touchdown status. So 308 points. Took a big step down this year, and that's not, I think, anything against Drew Brees. They were trying to save him, and they had one heck of a running game once they got it going, so they were able to keep a very balanced offense. Drew Brees, he's the only player in league history to throw 5,000 yards more than once, and he's done it 5 times, and we talk about this all the time. He's done it 5 times. It's only happened 9 times in the league's history. He is a phenomenal passer, but they didn't need to rely on him because they had a running game. So we expect that to be probably the case next year. They'll probably better defend it. I think they'll find more production with Drew Brees going forward, and most people seem to tend to agree. He's currently going as the 5th quarterback off the board. So definitely let you down if you invested a top 3 draft pick in him because you had to. He was going as the 2nd pick in the 4th round. A lot of narrative there to understand that. But I mean, hey, I'm not too upset about this. His consistency rankings do scare me, but it all had to do with the run game, I believe, because he was the 19th most consistent quarterback. But I think if you gave him the ball, he could still make it happen. And Michael Thomas will take another step. I bet they're going to invest in getting another tight end. I think they're going to really continue to build this team. And I like Drew Brees going forward. I'm probably not going to invest, and again, this is just me and my draft strategy, a 6th-round pick in the guy, because the only quarterback I would probably get at that point, honestly, is Aaron Rodgers, because that's just me. But for the masses, I think it's justifiable. He might drop based on where he finished, though. I bet you'll be able to get him, maybe not as the number 5, but I could see him going as probably like the number 8 quarterback once we get to draft season. I don't know. What do you think, Jason?
I love Drew Brees. I always have, and he is probably the best pure passer in history. I mean, maybe other than Dan Marino being the only one that I think might, you have to think of as being, better. But Drew Brees is amazing. He's been able to do amazing things. However, he's now in a system that he doesn't have to be Superman. Like we were talking about earlier with Russell Wilson. He doesn't have to save this team by throwing the ball for 5,000 yards in a season. They've now got, as you mentioned, an absolutely amazing running game with 2 extremely talented running backs. They finally figured out that Mark Ingram is good, and then they brought in the rookie Kamara, who is amazing, amazingly efficient, that kid. And then of course he's got his passing weapons, and they could add another. I mean, Ted Ginn Jr. is getting old, so they may look to add some youth behind him from whenever he's ready to retire, give him some more weapons to throw to, and I think that's actually going to make his consistency get better, because now he has that running game he can lean on a little bit, and make things happen a little bit more play action, things of that nature. So I still like Drew Brees, not necessarily in the top 3 like I normally would, but definitely around 5. I think this is absolutely justified.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, their weapons right now, some of them are aging, some of them need to be replaced, but this is a team that has shown through even recent seasons that they are just great at finding wide receiver talent. Michael Thomas, obviously a glaring example. Brandon Cooks, before they traded him away. Kenny Stills, who they traded away, who's now been pretty good in Miami at times with certain quarterbacks. Obviously the quarterback play in Miami is a whole other conversation. But they've been very good at finding talent, and I think they're going to probably look at getting someone either in the door, because I think they need another weapon. And I don't know if that'll be through the draft or free agency. Obviously they got a lot for Brandon Cooks. I don't know if they'll get someone of that caliber right away, but Drew Brees, look, he's going to be 39 next year, so maybe his 5,000-yard passing days are behind him, but he's still through for 4,300 yards, so he's going to get you a good floor. Yeah. The touchdowns are going to be what really pushes him over, and I think that they're going to have probably more trouble running the ball next year, just because teams are going to have a whole offseason to study what they did in the second half of the year. So I think he's going to have to throw for more touchdowns, and you could easily make an argument where he justifies this top 5 pick. I personally won't be taking him there. I'll probably expect him to finish somewhere in the mid to lower half of the quarterback ones, but I definitely think he has the upside still to deliver where you're saying. So yeah, Drew Brees, a guy that we love, a fantasy darling. I've had him on many fantasy teams throughout the years, and I honestly don't think he's slowing down. I think they're just trying to preserve him because, again, he's 39. And let's take this home. Last one, Dak Prescott. 304 points. And this is a guy who definitely burned a lot of people. His 12th place finish here is based on the 6-point per passing touchdown. In a lot of leagues, he finished a lot lower than this. And it's reflected by his draft stock. He is currently going as the 19th quarterback off the board. I'm not sure how much I think that this was the offensive line was worse. We knew that going in, and this is what I stressed, that the team's defenses were going to have an offseason to study him, which they did, and he clearly struggled. Not having Ezekiel Elliott to distract him from the passing game really hurt him going down the stretch, and the fact that Dez Bryant has not been the same guy and clearly is not having the same rapport with Dak Prescott like he did with Tony Romo is all really affecting the play of this young quarterback. So Dak Prescott, I think, is going to be polarizing, like we've said about a couple of these guys, and he is going to be one of those guys who I think he's going to go one way or the other. I don't think he's going to float here in the middle. I think he's either going to burn people or he's going to be great. So I don't know. What do you think about Dak Prescott in his 3rd year, not knowing what they're going to do yet this offseason?
Well, Dak Prescott is right on track in my opinion, because you have quarterbacks that come out in that first year and they're lights out, and then they always regress. That second year comes, they regress. And then we called it. I mean, I think you called it specifically.
I did.
This year that Dak Prescott was probably going to regress and take a step back, and it wasn't a massive step. I mean, he still finished as a 1. I'm not all that concerned. I think that in the third year, and this is the year that it usually all comes together, he's going to be able to figure out how to utilize his weapons better, how to play in this league better, and rely on that running game without all the distractions. Now Ezekiel will be there and not be facing any kind of suspension. So I like Dak Prescott going forward. Again, you hit it right on the head when you mentioned Des Bryant. Des Bryant is not playing well, and he needs to get more involved. And yeah, he's not being targeted, but like I said in a previous episode, he's the vet. He's got to go to Dak Prescott, grab him by the face mask, and go, "Hey man, throw the ball my way. I'll open."
I mean,
So I think they need to upgrade their weapons a little bit. They got a lot of scrappy little receivers, but they need to get another big guy on the outside.
Right.
And give Dak Prescott somebody to throw to.
They don't have a true number 2 there is the problem. I mean, Cole Beasley was a guy that everybody really liked, but he took a big step back this year as well. You could argue that was the quarterback play, but bottom line, Dak Prescott, he had the opportunity. He had more attempts, less completions, less yards, less touchdowns, over 3 times the interceptions. So, I mean, it was a big step back. We'll see. This team's going to have a hard time moving because if I remember correctly, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they're tighter against the cap. So we'll see how this plays out. I don't know. I think Ezekiel Elliott being back, like you said, and I hinted at, will be a huge boom for this team. I think it's going to help. It's going to relieve pass rush on him, and it'll give him some time. But they need, like you said, to get another wide receiver there, maybe another big body. A lot of people are pointing to the fact that Des Bryant needs to take a page out of Larry Fitzgerald's book and make a little bit of a transition to a little bit more on the inside where it can be more of a mismatch. He's just not had the same speed. He can still contest balls, but the number of times he's had that opportunity is lower. He's still a great red zone weapon, but, I mean, just being alone on the outside there, he's just not been the same player. So could he be? Maybe. But the trends that we've seen the last 3 years have shown that he's not that guy. And injury-filled years, I admit. But he's just clearly not having the same level of rapport like Des Bryant did with Tony Romo. So we'll see. This guy, again, he's going to be polarizing. People were burned by him. A lot of people invested a high draft pick on him, I know, because I've seen a lot of draft boards. And when it was all said and done, his average was about where he finished, but it's going to be interesting. This is going to be a very intriguing story to follow this offseason, and I wish we could dive into it a little bit more. Let me find his consistency ranking really fast. So he finished as the 10, 11, 12, 13th most consistent quarterback. So not what you want to hear. He only had 1 week on the entire season where he was a stud. Most of the times he was serviceable or a dud. So, I mean, that'll get you a 12th place finish. So, yeah, that will do it for us today. Again, we have Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Carson Wentz, Alex Smith, Cam Newton, Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Jared Goff, Drew Brees, and Dak Prescott as your top 12 fantasy quarterbacks from last year. And a lot more to get into. We've got the next 12 to get onto, and we'll probably get to those on the Patreon show. So if you guys want to check that out, again, that is on patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. And that will do it for us today. Please make sure you guys tune in on Tuesday when we will be starting. I know this is the one that people really get excited about, and this is the one that we really get to deep dive on. There's a lot more to look at other than speculation with some of these quarterbacks and, coordinator changes, weapon changes around them, but the running back review. So we'll get to part 1 of that because we're going to be covering that for a couple episodes here on the main show. So make sure you guys don't miss that. That will be on Tuesday. Hopefully CJ will be back. And, if you guys want to get more information on these quarterbacks and the next 12, your quarterback twos, especially if you're in a 2-quarterback league, head over to patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Any parting thoughts before we sign off, Jason?
Hey, guys, got to see it was a tough season as far as scoring, but you know what? Got to see one of the best Super Bowls of all time, one of the best football games of all time, honestly, that I've ever seen. So, hey, good year. I'm ready for the off season. Let's do it.
I like it. So again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, things of that nature, obviously we're looking for questions here, and we'll happy to answer them. Submit them on Twitter at the FF Fanatics, or you can reach us individually. I'm at G Palmer FFF, and Jason is at Jason Cabrera 13. So we are out of here. Everyone, take care. Have a great weekend. We will see you on Tuesday with a very exciting topic. Bye.